I'm Adia Ashina. Today we'll be talking about the main difference between the present perfect and the past simple tenses. And while we're studying the tenses, we always have some questions in mind. And so the first one is why we have to differentiate between the two tenses. For example, why do I have to use the present perfect tense and why do I have to use the simple past tense? What are the main differences between the two? And so let's start. Why do we use the present perfect tense? There are specifically 4 usages, and so let's discuss it in detail. And so, firstly, we use it for the actions that happened at an unspecified time in the past. That means you know the action happened in the past, but you don't know exactly when it happened, and you don't know the exact time it occurred. And the second one is the actions that started in the past and continued to the present. And so, as we have mentioned earlier, the present perfect is like a bridge connecting the past and the present. And so, we use it for the actions that started in the past and continued to the present. And number 3 is about the experience up to the present, and so that means it's about your life experiences and also the recent actions or changes with present relevance. What I mean by that article is that there has been some kind of change, or that there has been a recent action, and the result or the outcome is observable at present. Let's see the examples of these situations. And so we said that we use the present perfect tense for unspecified past, and so we say she has traveled to Japan, but exactly we don't know when she traveled to Japan. You're not given any specification about the past time or past date. We don't know the day, we don't have the time, and so for that reason we say she has traveled to Japan. And from past to the present, like a bridge we have mentioned earlier, he has lived in New York for 5 years, and so he started living in New York 5 years ago, and so he still lives there, and so he has spent the previous 5 years, the last 5 years in New York, so we use the present perfect tense. And for the experiences, that means it's your life experience. For example, if you have tried sushi before, if you haven't even tried it, you use the present perfect tense because it's your lifetime experience. That means in the past you didn't try it, and so today you haven't tried it yet, and so for that reason you say I have tried sushi before, or I haven't tried sushi before. And the last one is the recent changes. For example, you say I have put on a lot of weight recently. That means that it's a change in situation. For example, just a few months ago you were thinner and now you're a lot fatter, so it seems there's a change in the weight that you have put on, and so for that reason, for recent changes, and so what's the effect or the outcome or the result at the moment, you will seem a lot fatter. And now we're going to continue with the past simple tense. So we are making differentiation between the two. So we use the past simple tense again for 4 usages. And so the first one is for the actions that happened at a specified time in the past. That's different from the present perfect, as you see. And so because you have the exact time when something happened, for example, like yesterday, 2 days ago, 5 months ago, etc. And so for the second one, actions that start and finish in the past, and so all the actions, all the event takes place totally in the past with no reference to the present. And for the third one is in the storytelling, especially narrations, if you have a chain of actions following one another in the past, we use again the simple past tense to tell a story, to tell steps or the actions in the story, and also the actions of the people who are no longer alive. And so let's have a look at the examples of them together. For example, for specified past, as you remember in our previous statement about the use of the present perfect tense, we said that she has traveled to Japan, but actually we didn't know how and when she went there, but here we know when. She traveled to Japan 2 years ago, and so if you're given a specified time, you use the simple past tense. And also past chain events. For example, you open the suitcase and show the photo. This is an action, this is a chain event action. One follows the other, and so we use the simple past tense. And for past actions, for example, I last saw Jonathan the day before the accident. It was in the past, and it was the last time I saw Jonathan, so I'm using it for the past actions. And also for that people's actions, you know, Kobe Bryant, and so may he rest in peace. He had an accident, and so just because of that, he died. And so if you're talking about that people's actions, you use the simple past tense, like Kobe Bryant performed well as a basketball player. So now that we have answered the first question, why we use the simple past tense and the present perfect tense, we can move on with the second question in mind, how we can use it. For example, how we can form a sentence in present perfect tense, all the subjects take the past participle. It means verb 3 form of the verb in all types of the sentences. In the positive, affirmative, in the negative, and in the interrogative question form, we always use have or has according to the subject pronouns used. For example, for he, she, it, we use has, and for I, you, we, they, we use have. In the negative forms, though we use haven't or hasn't, we always use the past participle, as you see, eaten, we can say. That is the third form of the verb, and that's the case. What about the simple past tense? Let's talk about it, my dear students. And so, how can I use the past form? No matter what your subject pronoun is, it may be he, she, it may be I, we, you, they, you have to use the second form of the verb, whether it's regular and irregular. We're going to talk about them in detail in the following, in the forthcoming slides. And so, in the negative statements, we use didn't plus verb 1. That means, in other words, the bare infinitive form. There is no adding, there is no change in the verb, as you see. Here, in the positive affirmative statements, we use taught, but in the negative and in the question, we use tell. And so, we don't change it into the past form in the negative and in the question form. And so, another question comes about the use of the regular and irregular verbs. And so in the English language, it requires attention because the verbs are divided into two. The first one is the regular verbs and the irregular verbs. Regular verbs in the past participle and in simple past tense and the present perfect tense takes d, ed or ied to the base form. And irregular verbs don't follow a consistent pattern. There's no rule to apart from memorizing them because their structure differs, and so each irregular verb has a unique past participle form. Now we're going to go in detail, and so let's move on with the regular verbs. As we mentioned earlier, the regular verbs, if the verb ends in a silent e, we simply add d. For example, live becomes lived, hate becomes hated, and bake becomes baked. For example, we say Mom has baked a raspberry pie. And what about how to add ed? If your verb is talk, clean, and watch, you just add ed. For example, you say she has watched her favorite show. And also, if the verb ends in a consonant plus y, that means, for example, if you have if you have d, absolutely like that, you just change the y sound to I and add ed. ied comes. For example, you say cry, cried, and carry, carried, and study, studied. For example, you say he has studied English since this morning. And now let's have a look at the irregular verbs together. In the irregular verbs, here is a list of some of the most common irregular verbs, as you see. For example, what's the third form of be? In simple past tense, it becomes was over, and in present perfect, it becomes been, and the past participle form. These are the past participle forms of the irregular verbs, and so unfortunately, you have to memorize the irregular verbs because there's not a certain pattern to use them. So we have to, for example, we have to know that drink, drank, drunk, and so eat, ate, eaten, or fall, fell, fallen. Like that, we're going to memorize the past forms and the past participle forms of these verbs. And now we're going to talk about the main difference between been and gone. These are the two expressions that can be used in the present perfect tense, but with different meanings. And so, been means that you went somewhere, but now you're back. For example, you say, I have been to many countries worldwide so far. I went to Spain, I went to Italy, I went to Romania, I went to many different countries, and now I have come back. Or you say, I've been in Paris as a student for 4 years, and your 4-year time period has ended, and now you're back to Turkey. But if you're using gone, there's a difference. Gone means that someone went somewhere but hasn't returned yet and is still there. For example, if you say she has gone to the wets, she'll be back soon. When you say she'll be back soon, that means she's still in the wets, and so she went to the wets, but she hasn't come back yet. Or it is used with the meaning of lost. For example, if you say is gone, that means is lost. And so what are the time expressions that we can use with the present perfect? These are mainly, we're going to go in detail, for and since. And so we use for to indicate the duration of the time. For example, if we have for 5 years, for 6 days, for 2 hours, etc. If we have a number plus years, months, and weeks, etc., we use it. And also there are some specific structures like for ages, for a long time, we use again the for structure. And also we have since. Since refers to the starting point of the action, and so what you can see it just in the tables of the at the entrance part of the shops. For example, it says since 1995, etc. And after since, we can use three structures. We can use an exact time or date, we can use a noun, and we can use a sentence. For example, here I say, I've read 30 pages since I bought the book. This is a sentence, and we use since. And before the nouns, we can also use since. And before the exact time, we can use since again. And so let's move on with the details. We also have yet, just, already, still, ever, and never with the present perfect tense. And so let's see it together. We say with negatives and interrogatives, we use yet at the end of the statement. For example, you say, she hasn't sent me the details yet, or have you woken up yet? And still is used with the negative sentences only, just before the auxiliary verb hasn't or haven't. You say, she still hasn't sent me the details. And we have the just, and so we use the just with the affirmatives. That means the positive statements, and the interrogatives, the question form. For example, we say, they have just informed us about the delay, or have they just got their exam results? And so we use just immediately after the auxiliary verb, immediately before the verb. And so already it is used with all types of sentence. For example, she has already noticed that she's lying, or have you already cleaned the mess in your room? And we have ever and never. We use ever with the interrogatives. We use say, have you ever seen, have you ever wanted to travel to Romania, etc. And with the affirmatives, but bearing a negative meaning. Yeah, the sentences are normally affirmative, but actually the meaning is negative. I have never tried the Brazilian cuisine before. And we have lately, recently, and so far. For example, we say, have you met any of your students recently? You can use these time expressions with the present perfect sentences, either at the beginning of the statement or at the end of the statement. You can say, recently, have you met any of your students recently? Lately, we have received several anonymous emails, or you can say, we have received several anonymous emails lately. And what about the time expressions with the past simple? We have yesterday, last, ago, and the previous. For example, we say, she gave us an inspiring speech yesterday. We bought our flight tickets last Sunday. Or 3 days ago, they called to us to offer a refund, and the previous day they gave the money back to us. As you see, these are used at the end of the statements most of the time. For example, you can say, they called us to offer a refund 3 days ago, or you can use 3 days ago at the beginning of the statement. And these are the mostly used time expressions in simple past tense. And many thanks for listening to me. Hope you understood all the topics. See you in class tomorrow. Take care.